Welcome to all. We'll probably give it a couple of minutes before we start as more folks trickle in. If anybody wants to just give us a funny joke to kick off as we wait, feel free to do so. Brian Tron, I'm looking at you.
All right, let's see. Hey, are you a wrestling fan or action movie fan? You know The Rock? How does
Yep.
The Rock pee?
I don't know.
He Dwayne's his Johnson.
Oh, goodness, Brian Chong.
Is that PG-13 enough?
I
Sorry, most of my jokes are not safe for work.
Okay.
Going through my head like, nope, nope.
Then we appreciate the filter. Alrighty. Let's see. How about one more minute and then we can get started, Nadine.
Okay, got it. I have a cleaner version of that joke. Why do why do ducks have tail feathers?
Mm.
To cover their butt quacks.
Oh, Brian.
Hey, you asked.
Oh.
Love the
Writing-
addition of the dad jokes to the BCPC meetings.
Thanks, Josh.
Yeah.
Alrighty, let's go ahead and get started. It's 11:33. We have a number of guests here today in our room. I want to thank you all for being here. Happy Thursday. Can't believe it's July 18th already. I don't know where everything has gone, but welcome, and thank you for joining us and spending your lunch hour with us. So if we could start as usual, introductions into the chat. Please add your name, your organization and role, the coverage area you serve in the Tri-County region. We always want to emphasize that while we are here to, provide you with some updates relative to broadband and continue the broadband conversation, you folks often have cross-boundary, cross-city, cross-industry conversations, and that is of major value for our group in general, to communicate with each other there. So thank you. I'm Malika Ohm. I work with the Broadband Consortium in the Pacific Coast. I am working on standing in for our leader, Shelby Arthur, who should be returning to us next month. She's currently on family leave. But in the meantime, you've got me. And after that, you'll still have me, but not in the same capacity. I do lead the work with the VCOG team on our Ventura County project, which we'll be talking through today, and serve on some digital equity initiatives the consortia is involved with as well. Nadine, do you want to introduce yourself, and then we can go to Bill and Tim and then get through. Let's see who else is on here from the BCPC team.
Yes, my name is Nadine, and I am the comms person for the BCPC.
My name's Bill Simmons, and I am working in the Ventura County area, and I'm the consortium historian.
Tim?
Hi, everybody. This is Tim Tierney doing GIS mapping and other data management for the Broadband Consortium.
Thanks, Tim. And I see Michael.
Yeah, hello, Michael Foote with Reach and San Luis Obispo County.
Thank you. So that's your BCPC team today. So we can move on. So our agenda, we are going through our welcome and introductions. We'll provide we'll open it up to some general updates for all the counties. Then we'll go through some general California Broadband for All updates, and we'll go into the meat of our conversation, where we'll talk through the current Ventura vision. And we'll finish up with the roundtable discussion and a preview of our month ahead. Alrighty. So in terms of regional updates, I just wanted to open this up to the group here and to see if anybody has any updates from their region. We can start with Ventura County. We'll go reverse this time because I always put Michael on the spot from SLO County. So if we want to start with Ventura County, any new updates from our folks in Ventura County? Brian, anything new happening in the world of Moore Park?
No, nothing big. I'm actually looking forward to the county presentation later. I guess the only thing that's worth sharing maybe here was the California Emerging Technology Fund, who's leading an effort. Basically, it's a collaborative effort among governments, and they lured people in to their broadband meetings and efforts with the promise of a $1,000 grant just for participating in a meeting. And I am now in possession of a nice $1,000 check from the CETF. So it really did happen. And we have applied to be in their further one, which would provide a grant, I believe, of $20,000 towards digital literacy. But there's a lot more stuff you actually have to do. What we are offering is we are really good at integrating into development processes and getting broadband in there. We are looking to rip off someone's dig once policy because it's a lot easier to adapt. So I figure there'll be some collaborative folks in there if we get in, and hopefully that'll happen. But that's really all it here.
Thanks, Brian. I don't know if you've had a chance to engage with SCAG's Reddit study and their model ordinance that they are producing. There will be some learning sessions on that in the coming months, in the coming years, but they've developed a great model ordinance that integrates some of that dig once policy within it too. And I can share that along. I think we briefly touched upon it in the initial phases of introduction several months ago, but the ordinance is almost at the finish line. And then they will be taking it on the roadshow around the state so folks can get on board. But it is it's a really great comprehensive piece of policy and report. And so it looks, I think it would be awesome if everybody in the state of all the cities and all the counties got on board. We definitely have some barriers that could be eliminated through, that joint effort there.
Thank you for that. I did provide comments to them a couple of months ago, and I do have an unread email from last week from them with that update, but I'll look forward to that for sure.
Awesome. All right, in Santa Barbara County, moving up, do we have any updates on the county? I can provide an update in terms of the county of Santa Barbara has partnered with the Santa Barbara Foundation to participate in an ATT grant, an assisted tech, let's see, what's it called? Access to Technology grant. That is, the foundation has partnered with 5 organizations within the county to provide digital navigation training to seniors and adults with disabilities, in addition to device distribution. The device distribution should begin to occur, I'd say, towards the end of August and September. And so once we have more details on that, we'll share it with this group so you can forward along to the folks that you know within the community, and also and learn about the digital navigation training and outcomes that the grant is providing. Again, another update for Santa Barbara County is we'll talk about that later on in a future slide, but there has been an FFA draft resolution that will be up for a vote on the August 1 meeting. That includes the Chumash fiber network application. And so you can find out more details about that on the federal funding account website. And again, we'll talk about that later on. But that is an update there for the County of Santa Barbara. Additionally, the County Board of Supervisors has approved SBCAG's JPA amendment to serve as the facilitator and administrator of broadband activities within the county, leaving permitting to local jurisdictions, but serving as the convener of broadband activities within the county as a whole. Additionally, they're in the sort of final phases of the programmatic EAR relative to that, and we should have a presentation on that in September. Okay, moving up to San Luis Obispo County. I'm gonna kick it to you, Michael, or any other folks on the call that would like to contribute to that too.
Yeah, I don't have any region-wide updates. I do see Bill from SLO County and Josh from City of SLO, if either of you have anything to share out.
Sure, I can do a quick for City of SLO. Like Brian, we also joined the CETF on their offer of a $3,000. So we also got a check, and we did apply to be part of that learning community to further that. So we're waiting to see how that turns out. I did actually talk with one of their folks, and they thought they would have those decisions made kind of the first week in August, or so. People can keep an eye out for that. We also, as of our last meeting, we had finished our P3 agreement, so we were excited about that. We've kicked off design and engineering work to design and engineer the entirety of our broadband plan that had been adopted last June as well. So we're using the remainder of ARPA funds our council had allocated towards broadband to finish up that design and engineering work, which we're hoping to complete by about December, so that we're ready for the grant that we're about to get from the CPC for FFA, fingers crossed. But we're excited to be moving that design and engineering work forward so that as grants become available to us, we'll be able to get shovels in the ground quickly and get some things done.
Thank you, Josh.
I'll jump in. This is Bill from the county. Jump in with just a couple of additions. We also participated in the CETF grant, and I'm happy to be part of the learning community, and we'll certainly be using the checklist as a guideline and milepost for the digital equity going forward that the county will be working with. To give you a sense of what we're right in the middle of right now, is we're finishing low-level design and also hoping to get good news on FFA, but we finally did actually identify sites that weren't part of what the engineering team originally identified as places for ideal placement of cabinets and huts. And so we're going out and walking parcels and surveying that with them in a week or so, but finally feel like we're almost ready to wrap up the low-level design work in 2 polygons in Oceano and Aurora Grande. The other thing to note is we've been monitoring closely the BEAD challenge process, but haven't decided to get actively involved in making a challenge. We've looked at the possibility of doing that, but haven't found anything that would lead us to do that. But we're certainly open if there are entities, individuals or nonprofits or others that want to coordinate on that in SLO County. Happy to keep that open as a possibility. And then finally, we worked with Maria Kelly on trying to connect the dots with some access to facilities with mixed echo speakers up in Shandon and San Miguel for digital equity training that with the county library system. So that's probably it for. And finally, we do have a tentatively adopted budget for this fiscal year in the planning and building department got a grayed out position restored that will allow hopefully to do more planning and thinking about dig once and other issues relating to broadband and other planning priorities of the board. So that's good news in terms of just bandwidth to be working on related issues.
Awesome. That's a lot of updates. Thank you, Bill. Alrighty. If anybody else has anything to contribute to the regional discussion, please feel free to chime in. If not, then we'll just continue to move on, and feel free to interject if something just happens to pop up that you recall once we're speaking. I'm just going to run through a couple of updates for Broadband for All, and give you a heads up on some upcoming meetings. The California Broadband Council meeting is scheduled for July 23rd. We can drop the link to that in the chat in a little bit. But that meeting will be an overall program update from CDT, CPUC, and CETF on the Broadband for All action plan implementation, and then updates for middle and last mile, state broadband adoption, and ACP efforts, or ACP alternatives, and state digital equity plan, and BEAD as well. The Middle Mile Broadband Initiative team has launched a customer sounding survey. We'll add a link to that in the chat as well, moving in a little bit. But that is to connect with potential MMBN Middle Mile Broadband Network customers. That would be local governments, internet service providers, and anchor institutions, to participate in understanding how one might want to engage with the state's middle mile network, and or access services or assets within that network. That survey was previously closing at July 10th, but it looks like they've extended to July 31st. So we definitely recommend you taking a look at it, even if you're not sure if your organization would be participating, just to get an understanding of what the state is looking at, and also to provide your feedback there. The Middle Mile Advisory Committee and stakeholder, the Middle Mile Advisory Committee meeting is scheduled for tomorrow at 10. That is a broader meeting. And then an MMBI stakeholder meeting is scheduled for July 26th. What I would say in terms of the differences of the two meetings is the advisory committee is more of a general update on the process of the program, and the stakeholder meeting provides a lot more opportunity for stakeholders to engage with the folks who are leading the effort and are the programmatic leaders there. On the chart there is just an overview of the current status of miles within the state, San Luis Obispo County, Santa Barbara County, and Ventura County. These are just the overall number of miles, not the network development. I would advise you to recommend you attend one of the middle mile meetings to get an update on the current project status, the most up-to-date status. Next slide. For last mile programs, the FFA awards are trickling in on a rolling basis. On July 11th, CPUC approved two resolutions that awarded grants in the total of about $88.6 million. None of those awards were in our area or our Tri-County region. But as I mentioned earlier, the Chumash Fiber Network, which is in Santa Barbara County, is on the voting agenda, or is in a draft resolution. We don't know what the voting agenda is yet, but it is intended to be presented during that voting agenda of August 1st, from my understanding. It could be once the agenda is released, we can provide an update as well. But kudos to the San Ynez Band for your application and getting it to this point. We're excited about that in the San Ynez Valley there.
It's like because Karen doesn't have any long-term health care options in France. And so Augie's like, you'll get here.
Oh, there we go. For
quick
sorry?
quick question.
Yes, please.
Comment on the SurfNet communications, even though there was non-public kind of activity, it does cover north part of San Luis Obispo County. So I just wanted to point that out. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that I believe Reach and Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, Reach has done was doing some assisted SurfNet and did some work with SurfNet in the application process. But we are waiting for an update.
Yeah, we did letters of support for those areas, and then we had some conversations around some of their maps, but yeah, I have not heard an update yet from them.
Okay. So we'll continue to reach out to SurfNet, or if there's anybody on the call here, or anybody listening once the recording is released, reach out to us so we can know what you're doing. We can, we'd love to understand and engage with the communities around you as the network is built out. All right, we can go on to the next slide. A brief update for BEAD is that the challenge process did begin last Monday. It starts with the 30-day challenge phase, and as Bill had mentioned earlier, that it's folks still have some time to get a sense of whether you want to engage in the process. But the challenge, the 30-day challenge phase, I believe, closes August 8th. So it's important to kind of get an understanding of your communities, take a look at the maps, and also the BEAD team will have office hours beginning, I think, today at 1 p.m. and weekly. If you have questions, you can also reach out to CPUC caseworkers for questions. And the last month's presentation from the BEAD team is on our BCPC YouTube page as well. And the team was so gracious to provide us with a lot of information on that there. All right, next slide. Okay, in terms of digital equity, the CDT is hosting a briefing of their key findings from their State Digital Equity Plan Implementation and Capacity Grant Program Design Questionnaire. It's a very long name, but essentially CDT reached out to communities throughout the state to get feedback on what the subgrantee process could look like for the state's digital equity plan. And as a reminder, the state has about a $770 million allocation from the NTIA, of which a percentage of that allocation is set for G&A and program update expenses, but then there will be a subgrantee process. I'll put a link to that capacity grant briefing in the chat in a little bit as well. But that feedback is going to be helpful for CDT in understanding how to organize the subgrantee process that they should release later on this year. Finally, the NTIA's Digital Equity Competitive Grant, NOFO, we should expect to see in the next week or so. I believe it's 30 days after June 26th as per statute. And that competitive grant is open to anyone throughout the country for digital equity programming grant programs. Once that NOFO is released, we'll also blast it on our email newsletter. So if your organization is involved in digital equity, please keep an eye out on that as well. Okay, and finally, on to our special topic. I see Jory and Will on the call. I'm going to kick it off to you, but first I will just kind of talk through, our region. BCPC represents San Luis Obispo County, Ventura County, and Santa Barbara County. Our special topic this week is to talk through the Ventura County vision. So we've asked interest to come and speak about the County of Ventura's middle mile broadband network and the intent the county has for building out broadband. In addition, we'll provide a brief update on the Ventura County broadband strategy relative to the VCOG ladder grant, which we have been sharing throughout the year so far. But I will kick it off to you, Will or Jory, or Bill, if you want to add any additional intros, please do so.
Can I get a screen share, Malika, so I can just pull up a couple of slides?
Yes.
Thank you. That. Yeah, thanks for the time. So Jory Wolf is our project executive VP that has been working with the county since 2019, I think. And we've been working in concert with Bill and the BCPC. We've been working specifically for Terry Theobald, the county CIO. We also have been working on projects with the city of Ventura, 2 different projects, including a design engineering that we're doing now. And then because of the county project, I've been working closely with other cities within the region, most recently and specifically Santa Paula, Fillmore, and kind of everybody along the line of the phase 1 build. So I wanted to just kind of show you really quick what that phase 1 build is. It's the FFA project. The county, when it started on this project, had a few goals that you see there on the screen, and it was always about, if you wanted to boil it down to 2 things, ensuring that you have adequate, sufficient, high-speed county communications between not just the county itself, but with its partner agencies, the cities within the county, and making sure that there's competition and affordability for those services for businesses and residents alike. The county started on a regional conceptual design that was completed in 2020, and that's what you see here. And that was intended to connect all the major cities, populated areas of the county in a regional network, taking advantage of different projects that were, might offer joint trench opportunities, so on and so forth. And then 22 rolled around and the state released its intended planned middle mile routes, which we're all familiar with. And the crossover there, you see, I mean, for good reason, it followed many of the same routes. And so what that did was that kind of late 22 put the county in the position of figuring out, well, it doesn't make sense to overbuild. And so we started looking at different options, different routes. And then the FFA funding came out and the county wanted to target those funds and kind of take on a phase 1. So we looked throughout the entire area and we identified phase 1 as the area most in need. It had the highest concentration of unserved household locations according to the CPUC maps. It also had the highest concentration of those households that fell outside of any city limits. So they were in unincorporated county areas. And that was along the Highway 126 corridor. So this is the phase 1 project that was submitted for the grant last summer. And we are anticipating that word is going to come down any day. And you'll see it actually runs all the way outside of county limits to the city of Santa Clarita. That's to provide interconnectivity with the state middle mile on the north-south route on I-5 and ensure redundancy on that side. And then it comes all the way over, interconnects with the state middle mile along the 101 north-south corridor. So you have redundancy on both. And then just drops, you'll see it slightly there on the southwest corner, drops down in and would interconnect with the city of Oxnard's network as well. It provides interconnectivity for the city of Ventura's network right around Satacoy and the telephone in Satacoy, interconnects to the city of Santa Paula's network, the city of Fillmore's network, and also runs through the residential areas and the commercial areas. So for the most part, we're following either the highway right away or the BCTC rail right away. But even when we're on the rail right away, we divert off into the city to make sure that in each city we interconnect. Sometime last summer, I want to say it was June, the state contacted the county and said, we hear you guys have a regional project. The state says they wanted to build a middle mile from I-5 to Santa Paula. And they said, is the county interested in a joint build? And so those conversations have led to a joint build agreement between the county and the state, where this project is going to basically double up on the conduit and the fiber, so that the state will have its network and the county will have its network. That basically reduces the cost. The state is contributing about almost $7 million to the project for their share. They've elected to extend their middle mile beyond Santa Paula and go all the way west to 101. So they've actually expanded their network. They wanted to interconnect with the city of Santa Clarita and some routes that they have. So we have Santa Clarita tied in there as well. And then just recently, they've added one more interconnect point for a future middle mile route along Highway 23 in Fillmore. So there is actually going to be 3 interconnects with the state middle mile. The blue shading are the census blocks that the county identified in its application to say, these are the census blocks that have a significant number of unserved households, according to the CPUC maps. And the county partnered with, did an RFP process and selected Astound as its P3 partner. And so Astound is going to come in and operate this network for the county for the next 20 years. They are also going to use this network to get into all those neighborhoods to serve the unserved households, but they're interested in more than just the unserved. They're interested in the entire community and indeed the entire county of Ventura. And Astound is looking at this as the first entry point, the foot in the door, to become a major competitor of AT&T and Charter within the county. This project will enable them to begin offering services across Oxnard, Port Hueneme, City of Ventura, everybody you see along the 126 corridor. There's a small section near Somas that we're putting in an aerial extension from the middle mile just to get to a community there in Somas. And Astound is looking at phase 2 of how then can they get to the other areas. Phase 2 is going to be looking at Moore Park, Simi, Thousand Oaks, Camarillo, getting up by Ojai, which you can't see on the map. Oh, you barely can, along the 150 corridor. So this is just the first in several phases. And Astound is the key to this, because Astound is the provider so that there actually is a qualified, experienced internet service provider that's going to be offering these services. They've guaranteed prices for 10 years, a not to exceed price. They have a low income household price that they've guaranteed. Astound is providing a $3 million cash match for the grant as well. And we're just at the 60% low level design stage for designing this network. And we expect to wrap that up probably in the next 30 days or so, making a couple of changes to avoid some congested areas we discovered through fielding. But we'll have that wrapped up and be shovel ready to begin construction as early as this fall. Color coding, just if you're wondering, the red and the pink. Red is directional bore underground, pink is cable plow. Because we're on the rail right away, there's significant portions that we're able to use a cable plow, which cuts the cost by about half over directional bore underground. So a combination of having the rail right away and the lower costs made this extremely attractive to the state, and that's why they entered into the joint build agreement. Terry Thiebold at the county has a team working on this at the county, and they pushed through a right-of-way access agreement with VCTC at their June meeting. So both VCTC and the Board of Supervisors have approved that right-of-way agreement. And they are also have agreed to right-of-way agreements with the various cities to ensure that there's sharing of assets there and sharing of right-of-ways there. And that's pretty much it. All told, it's 46 miles, the route. The 2 conduits, 188th strand is the county's portion. It's a $30 million project. Expect to have funding this summer, announced this summer as these grants are being rolled out and announced. There's more than 1,800 unserved households in those blue polygons that will be connected. The county is looking at publicly owned dark fiber that it can use for interagency connectivity. The private partnership I mentioned, and then the joint build and the contributions from the different parties there. So it's just the first of probably, I would say, 4 to 5 phases. We're in process of looking at basically redesigning that 2020 map and thinking about, okay, we don't want to go rebuild all the middle mile. How do we use the middle mile, this map, and build off of that and provide the interconnectivity and through the neighborhoods and the corridors that are most in need. So that's pretty much where we're at with that project. And again, there's been a lot of conversations with the different cities on this route, but we look forward to kind of figuring out how those conversations are going to evolve with Moore Park and Simi and Thousand Oaks, Camarillo, Ohio over the next year. And the county is continuing to look at other grant opportunities, CASIF and others for future years, as well as BEAD, to try to figure out how to help fund phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. So I think that was everything as quickly as I could run through it. So happy to take any questions or anything if anybody has ones. Otherwise, I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Will. Yeah, if we could open it up to questions. Does anybody have any questions? That was a very quick run through of a very complex and really interesting and exciting project. So we'd love to hear some questions for folks.
As part of phase 1B, I just want to see you answer my question at the very end there, which was kind of what's the time frame for the next rounds, and we'll stand by to assist politically and with funding requests.
Yeah, I think the CASA funding is allocated funding through the state every year through 2032, if I'm not mistaken. They have not announced that they have yet to announce or open the application period for the 2024 round, which is usually announced in the spring. I think they're trying to get through the FFA funding first. But we anticipate as soon as that's open that, we might be looking at smaller phases or something, and then examining what maps they're going to use. And I think that's the question is, are they going to use the BEAD map? Are there going to be successful challenges to the BEAD map, which I hope all of you are seriously considering, because I was not overly impressed with the BEAD maps when they came out. I think they really missed a lot of underserved and unserved areas and communities. So that's something that we're looking at too as well, and talking with various groups about how to challenge these across the state. But yeah, I think that's the phase 2, phase 3 is CASA funding. What does the map look like? And where, again, I think the county wants to prioritize these based on where it makes the most sense financially, but where it also makes the most sense because there's the greatest need. Obviously, not just for grant eligibility, but those are the communities that you want to connect first, are the ones that have the least choice. Most of those areas you saw in blue in the polygons were a cable monopoly. They have no other option other than charter. So those are a good first area, if even that. Those are a good first area to start where you can create some competition.
Well, do you have any indication of how imminent is? I mean, I know that there's some back and forth and ongoing conversations now between the county and CPUC, but I don't know, I'm obviously scanning my email every couple of weeks when they start doing advance notices of resolutions. I can't get a feel though if we're talking about a meeting in the next, an announcement in the next 2 weeks of a resolution, or maybe 2 months, or maybe or by the end of the year. I mean, can you get, talk about urgency, or what your impressions are?
Our indications are that they plan on making all the announcements before the end of August. Once they make an announcement of a recommendation, that opens up a 30-day hearing. So if you say the last announcements are the end of August, then the last CPUC meetings might be the end of September, first week of October. Other than that, there doesn't appear to be a pattern. We've had a lot of questions. We're representing, I think, maybe a dozen different cities and counties and COGs around the state on FFA grants. We've had a whole bunch of questions on some of these. We didn't have a single question on Fremont, and they got announced for recommendation back in June, and totally took me by surprise because they had never asked any questions. They asked all their questions during the 30-day period. That public review period is more than just the general public. It's clear that state agencies are doing their review during that period of time as well, and asking questions about costs and efficiencies. So yeah, we didn't get any warning about Fremont. Indio was recommended a few weeks ago. no real questions there. So yeah, it really seems to vary. But I would expect that all of the announcements are probably going to roll out before the end of August.
I think tacking on to one of your points on CASA funding too, with the recent vote of approval for increased budget authority for CPUC to access more funds for CASIF accounts grants. We'll probably see additional opportunities there in the coming year once the next grant period is announced. And then Davis Park had a question for you, Will, if the county anticipates or the project anticipates applying for any loan loss reserve funds.
Not as part of this project. I wouldn't rule anything out for future phases. I think all of the, all the different jurisdictions on this call are going to find that this first grant is hitting the low-hanging fruit, right? And then as you progress on and you start saying, well, what's the next tier to hit? It's going to get a little more complex, a little more difficult, a little more challenging. And as we go on year over year, over the next few years, people are going to have to get more creative about how to finance, how to fund, and how to build these things. Because it's there, and that's a good thing, because that means, well, we're reducing the number of unserved in our communities, right? And it's, so I suppose you could look at that and say, well, that's a good thing. It's getting harder to get grants because the number of served is going up. But yeah, I think all those are options when you go forward and you start looking at how to get creative about these things.
Yeah, and well, sorry, on this screen, there's probably one more question. Is there any more thought been given towards what that JPA in that Venn diagram, if that's still needed or if that's focused differently?
I'll let Bill take that.
Yeah, Bill and Malika are heading that part up.
I think in a way, in a roundabout way, Brian's leading the witness there, but the question, because he's at the tip of the spear. I mean, he did a great job talking about the JPA this last week at VCOG, and so. And I do think, Brian, the conversation that we had at VCOG on this last Thursday was probably between Jory and Will. The catalyst was a couple of weeks ago. The answer is clearly we're taking that JPA, and I was going to do this in the follow-up comments to Will's presentation, but we're taking that towards more of the adoption side of things and not the deployment side of things at this point. I mean, we really, the deployment is coming together the way it's coming together based on the conversations is coming together. And adoption is where the conversation needs to occur at the regional level, and in terms of how do you get the connections and how do you get the literacy and and provide all the funding to take full advantage of the broadband that occurs. So, but you're right there in the midst of all of this as we hone in on what that JPA would look like. And yes, you're right. The original design was perhaps to have a completely separate organization. What it's looking like now is it could be as easy as doing it under the existing JPA for VCOG, or even having slight modifications of that organization's existing JPA. So Terry has been a great leader on this. He clearly believes that we ought to just create organizations that reflect what we're doing. And so as we define how we collaborate, the organizational constructs will follow.
Thank you.
With that, I'm going to dive right into the second bullet, the Ventura County broadband strategy. Year and a half ago, we went ahead and made a proposal for the Local Area Technical Assistance Grant, LATA. At that point in time, I don't think we had any idea of how this convergence would be occurring at this present time. I don't think we recognized how FFA was going to be in the center of the three concentric circles. We had three tasks. We were going to do a regional strategy, the last mile pilot, and the JPA discussion. And what has just really eloquently come down beautifully is this timing, where the FFA award is really going to launch all of this in terms of from moving it from planning and discussion and vision to actual reality. And so the regional strategy talking about that circle first. We've been engaged talking to communities about in creating profiles. We've been talking about outreach and engagement within those communities. And we're going to be coming up with these community cameos. And then there's going to be, as Brian talked about, the formation of an organization regionally that's going to interconnect the dialogue as well as the activities occurring that are going to be very disparate across communities, but they still need to be connecting to one another and coordinated amongst one another. And so there's a regional perspective, and it'll all come together under the JPA. The last mile pilot, on the other hand, is from an FFA standpoint, if we're going to go and put phase 1 in there, how do we engage community-based organizations to get the connections we need? And how do we, look at the resources required for literacy and education and what is, in talking about the affordability issues that are going to all be involved? We really want to, if you build it, will they come? We want to make sure that we can do everything possible to make sure that they do. And so it's all coming together at the same time in the same way and in the same product. Our goal, we think we're going to make it, is completing our draft in the September timeframe, and then having the final put together in the December timeframe, the end of the calendar year. And what that would be doing for us is setting the stage for the organization to follow, and as well as the collaboration that'll be ongoing from here on out between cities and the county in the pursuit of funding and resources for all of this. So that's the flyover, and I can't thank Will and Jory enough for being the catalyst and the heart of all of these conversations. It's our job to run around and make sure that everybody is connecting, and we're building an organization to support what they're creating. And it's an exciting time.
I think one of the most important things, Bill, to take away from all of this is once you do have the public funded and owned infrastructure, you do have new opportunities for building a tech ecosystem. So this always promises new jobs, local tech workforce, growing youth technology and awareness, and then bringing that back to other family members in the home. This can be quite a catalyst for change within the county. So we should capitalize on the asset, organize ourselves around the human element, and make good use of that investment.
Thank you, Joy. Very forward-looking, and for those reasons, I'm migrating away from broadband and into tech, smart city, and the future vision of what all of this is going to look like.
Thank you. Thank you both. I'd love to invite some additional questions for Jory or Will or myself or Bill about the Ventura County strategy. I think, the intent is to work together across industry, municipality, government, county, community-based organizations, our community members, and ensure that we're all working together for this. So to be as inclusive as possible. But we definitely invite questions and comments and, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? We know that I know that I'm not an expert for sure. So I love to hear from the folks on the call. If there's anything that you feel we could be missing, are there opportunities that you think that we should ensure that we're engaging in? Let us know what you think.
This is Bill from San Luis County. I'm curious about what specifically, other than the Astound guaranteed rates, and I'm not saying that's trivial by any means, but what are the other things that you're thinking about or will be thinking about in the fall as you think about affordability and access?
Will or Jory, I think that might be a question for county's intent on the.
I'm sorry, I missed the first half of
that. Specifically, beyond the Astound relationship and the breaking the monopoly-ish things and the guaranteed price for the 20 years or whatever, what specifically other steps are being done on affordability?
From the
Well, you
county
want to
side?
talk about the discount programs, et cetera, that are mandated as part of the FFA.
Yeah, I apologize, I don't have the number in front of me, but they required a low income program, and Astound has what they call, and I might be mixing this up with like the telephone lifeline thing, but I think they called it Internet First or something similar. It was like a 50 meg service, kind of, baseline service, and for qualifying families, low income families, it was like $9.95 or $14.95 a month, I think. It was included in the application. It's there, and they offer this across the state, right? It's like a universally kind of, if you have a low income household, they'll provide that base level of service. I think the other thing that everyone's been wondering about is there, and I don't have an answer, but is there going to be a successor program to the ACP? I did see a lot of questions from some other counties, and not Riverside County, Imperial County in particular, on their grant recommendation. They got a lot of questions, and they engaged in a public back and forth with the CPUC about what was their plan in the absence of ACP. Because I think that that's something that helped make it work, but it was a subsidy, and it's difficult for governments to kind of continue to maintain that. So I think the more low income offerings that you see from companies like Astound, but I think that what we generally see is that over the years, the cost of internet goes down. And the biggest thing that pushes those prices down is having a competitor. There's no incentive for Charter to charge less than their $90 for a gig in Ventura County when they know the only option is for those customers to go use a copper telephone wire with AT&T and get 3 megs. And we have seen across the state that when you add in a fiber competitor, it's not just their price point that makes a difference for residents, it's that the existing incumbent starts dropping theirs to retain customers. And then you get a bit of a price battle, kind of going to the lowest number that they can make it work. So I've personally seen it where the moment that we announced in a city, the moment we announced a competitor to AT&T, they dropped their $25,000 service installation charges for business. I mean, within 24 hours of the press release, they hung flyers on all the businesses saying, "Oh, we're waiving the $25,000 fee for you now." So you do see that it gets their attention. And as long as they think that they've got a stranglehold on it, there's not a lot of, and I would lump together, it doesn't have to be just a monopoly. The cable, the telecom duopoly that controls most of our state, it makes it very difficult because there's just sort of a agreement there, right? Like, well, that's our price point, and we'll compete on that. And you really need a change maker or a disruptor like an Astound or a Sonic. Or some of these others that are starting to come in from out of state to say, we're just going to change how we do business and change how we operate. And that's where we've seen the biggest impact on everybody's prices, not just that one new provider.
So I wanted to share one observation from a consortia standpoint. As much as this says our special topic today was Ventura County, I can't emphasize enough that what you've seen, what you've heard is part of what the consortia is helping to hold together on is part of all 3 counties. So much of what we're doing this year is based on what Santa Barbara County was doing with SBCAG and the regionalization and the JPA last year, the year before. So we wouldn't have met Astound if it hadn't been for San Luis Obispo County and the relationship that had been established in San Luis Obispo County with Digital West, and the partnerships that have been formed between Digital West and the city of San Luis Obispo. And there was so much that they were doing there that we were excited about San Luis Obispo County and that relationship with that same group and business leader that we invited them to come down and look at Ventura County. So the 3 CIOs, Dan Millay and Chris Chergwin and Terry Theobald, they're simpatico and they're talking about this stuff. They want to design networks where they have multiple connections between the counties. So as you see what's happening here, also imagine in your minds, we have leaders in the Tri-County area that want to share and pull it together and really create this core interconnection between our three counties. And so philosophies and opportunities and all of the coordination that's going on, it's not just a countywide ecosystem of activity, but it's a Tri-County, strategy that we're trying to push forward and maintain. And everybody's talking to do that. So,
well, and it's interesting, Bill, because when we started this about 3 years ago or more, this was really a tri-county vision, and it was about how we were going to connect all three counties. Of course, now the state stepped in and through the middle mile has been able to provide that connectivity. So as a region, it's really now up to the three counties to come together and capitalize on that investment.
it's exciting times.
Bill, Lucia, I put in a couple of legislation for you to take a look at when you have a chance.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly where they are currently, but
I
those
saw
two
that.
help.
Yeah, 424. It looks like it puts a requirement of the $30. That looks like it's still active and it's in the assembly, so still moving forward in the second house.
Yeah,
I
and
looked,
then
I looked
oh,
in both.
sorry, yeah, Brian, you're the
Yeah,
you're
they're
the
both
legislator.
active right now, and
Okay.
they're both in their respective appropriations committees. Looks like both were
Okay.
also late gut and amend, so they're going to go back for a concurrence vote.
Concurrence vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe the amendment on the AB 1588 is to is the state's potential response to ACP in using Lifeline funds to kind of help create our own California ACP, for a lack of better interpretation.
No,
sorry, Jory, go ahead.
That's very accurate. I think the federal funds for ACP are not going to continue. They're looking really now to the various IIJA and BEAD programs to be able to sustain that effort going forward with the requirements for discounted programs from the carriers and new incumbents. But one of the things I just want to mention about the Ventura County effort, besides that there are connections to other counties within the Tri-County area, and the connections, of course, through the state middle mile, is that I think there were over 160 agencies that participated in putting this plan together. So we have miles and miles of interviews and conversations with people. This was not just the county effort. This is really an effort. I mean, Brian's been slogging through this with us from the beginning. There are cities that did master plans themselves: Oxnard, Ventura, San Buenaventura, in Moore Park, and others in other counties in Santa Barbara, as well as San Luis Obispo County and San Luis Obispo itself. Paso Robles, there's been quite a bit, the Chumash up north, quite a big effort. We can't just say that these are successes unto themselves. They are collectives of work by many, many people. Water districts, public works agencies, railroads, transportation commissions, COGs of governments, city, municipal governments, as well as county coming together. So it really does show the power of regionalism, and regionalism reduces cost, but also improves the benefit for the public by stretching those dollars widely.
Thank you, Jory. All right. Well, if there are any more questions, feel free to interject, but I think that was a great ending comment there, Jory. We didn't want to open it up to any remaining updates for across the region and open it up to a roundtable discussion. I think, taking this Ventura County vision and seeing and kind of internalizing it, how is it replicable in San Luis Obispo County to a degree, right? How is it replicable? How is it aligned with Santa Barbara County? How does it look going south? I know we have some LA County folks on the line here too. How does this look as a state? I think it's definitely an interesting moment. And we're yet to see how it goes, but I want to open it up to additional updates, comments.
I just have a quick comment, and that is, I hope you all are watching the FFA, the California FFA Last Mile website. Over the course of the next 2.5 months, you're going to see billions of dollars of funding for government and private sector, but hopefully a lot of government projects throughout the state. There's going to be a lot of, in my opinion, get the popcorn, sit down and watch the movie and watch it unfold. It's going to be quite a moment in the history of broadband in the state.
I have a question for that, Jory. What are your thoughts on the workforce to implementing all this deployment? Do we have it in the state? Do we feel that, workforce development teams and are we ready?
First come, first served, as it goes. My wife was just complaining about walk-ins over at Quest Diagnostics to get a blood test. The same thing is going to hold true for everybody who's going to go to the spout and try to get their construction package bid on. We're going to see prices go up because demand is going up. We're going to see a lot of changes in materials and labor costs. Fortunately, financing rates are going down. It's for ancillary work, but for the most part, it's going to be, in my opinion, a horse race.
So it would behoove, our government partners, our municipal partners, to find the pre-construction barriers, i.e. planning, permitting, things like that in advance to prepare and to engage with the folks who, are potential award grantees to get those things ironed out before, so that when the time comes, you can be first in line. Right?
If you have a project that you think is going to get funded, you should be talking to contractors now. If you think you're going to get funded, you should be talking to designers if you haven't completed your design work now, or you probably should have started that under LADA a long time ago, starting in 2022 or the end of their 2022. So catch up. This is really a one-time opportunity. I don't see this coming back again for government agencies. And so you really do need to be prepared, but be forward thinking. Think outside the box and think in parallel movements. Not linear, because you'll never make it across the finish line. You have 18 months to build these projects.
I wanted to just drill down a little bit further on what Jory started the conversation with in terms of an exciting time in the industry and how it's changing. And this is the broadband space is going to look very different. One thing I meant to mention, we were talking as a follow-up to their presentation, was we did everything right, we as a region, in this proposal. And you look at all the proposals that were submitted by FFA, the fact that you looked at the criteria to have the public side leading, to have the private side partnering, to do all of the partnering that had been done, and in all of the analysis and in groundwork that had been done, it was a very, very tall bar to begin with from the very start. And yet we met those objectives as a region, and not everybody did. I think that those companies that did submit FFA proposals, and they were just originating from a company, are not going to have the advantage as a collaborative will and would, and in being publicly led. And so we met the intent. And it took a lot of work. You know, they put together an RFP. They advertised and announced for partners. You know, we got a partner. You know, but we'd been working. You know, Magellan had been on board doing the research and you know, digging up the opportunities for a year or two in advance of the proposal itself. And so it's going to be a very different world. It's going to be a collaborative broadband world. We're going to have partnerships everywhere with everybody. And that's not a bad thing. We're going to have instead of being hierarchical or bureaucracy organizations, we're going to have networks of organizations working together and collaborating. And so the world will look very different as we get through this. And we're going to be doing business very different.
I'm afraid that some of you are probably thinking that your time has passed and that you missed the train. That's not true. That there is still more money coming. So please muster. CASF for 2024 is going to come back around again, as Will indicated. Yes, it's a little bit delayed because 2023 announcements are just now coming out. But 2024 window will open sometime this fall after FFA, which I think FFA will be complete by the end of September. So get prepared for that. California capital projects, you know, first of all, CASF is $150 million. So there's money there for you. In addition to that, there's the California capital projects still at $580 million. And then of course, BEAD is coming and participate in the challenge, no doubt. But when BEAD comes out later this year, that this is something for you to consider, especially if you're in eligible areas and or can change your eligibility based upon your review, research, and your protests during the comment period. So we're not done. This is going to be a 3-year party, and it's going to be sustained. There's money. It's not just one time, but there's money throughout the entire process.
Okay, well, thank you. And if we have any more updates or anything, other questions, anything to talk about, please feel free. If not,
one thing
please, Josh.
I'll say, I want to reiterate how exciting I think it is that we are reaching kind of the level of collaboration and interop that we're getting to. I think it's been a long time coming, and it's really been great to see how that has built. And you know, we've seen it within our county building over the last few years. We've seen it coming together with the tri-county area, and so you know, I think I want to make sure we don't understate how important the work we're doing is going to be to the residents of our counties. And so it's great to see a great example of government doing what people would want government to do, improving the way that they live and can do business in their daily lives. And I think we don't get that opportunity as often as we would like. And so I just want to make sure we're not understating that.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, on that note, we look forward to hearing next month. We're going to hear an update from the San Luis Obispo County region. So Josh and Bill, I'm guessing Michael will reach out to you and we'll hear a little bit about what's going on in San Luis Obispo and get an understanding there and see some opportunities for, again, more regionalism. So that's next month, Thursday the 15th, 11:30 to 1 approximately. We may end early. We won't go later, but bring your lunch. And that's what we have ahead for next month. And with that, we can close with the final slide. We'll wrap up. Any final comments or questions? Please feel free to chime in. If not, thank you so much for joining us today and for the conversation and the excitement and the recognition and the opportunity of of this moment. And we appreciate you.
We appreciate you too. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.